Hi, and welcome back to another episode of Building Pathways to Healthy Minds. I'm Priscilla Bagley, your host, and today we're talking to Missie Hills, who I so enjoyed chatting with. This conversation was very eye-opening, and it's an important one for us to have. So, Missie Hills is a mom engineer, and her tagline is she likes to help smart people solve complex problems. She's also a board member for ChildBuilders and a leader in the organization RedM, which fights trafficking. Today, we talked about how parents can impart skills in their children that stop trafficking from even starting. We can talk about grooming with our children and predators, and how assertiveness and solving problems and being open with our children can actually lead to safe environments. I loved this interview, and it reminded me that all of us can be superheroes in our own sphere of influence, because I really feel that about Missie. She is making a difference, and her past experiences have led her to be a champion for children, and it is an amazing thing to see. I hope you enjoy this as much as I did. I'm so happy to be here with Missie today, Missie Hills. She is a great advocate for child builders and works on our board. So thank you for being here.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Missie, so tell us a little bit more. I know you're an engineer. What specifically do you do with that?
I work here in Houston for a pretty large oil and gas company and engineer by trade, but my work's really focused on strategy and risk management for operations. And so usually I'm helping really smart people solve complex problems. That's my little tagline. But when I'm not tackling those big complex problems in natural gas, um, I'm out in the community seeing what I can do about a lot of the problems that we have in our own Houston community. And that's led me to not only join the board of Child Builders for the last about 3 years or so, but also I have taken a leadership role in a nonprofit organization called RedM, which is a movement in the anti-trafficking space. And so I'd say most of my time outside of work is pretty busy with the community stuff. But then I also have two children of my own, two young boys, age 9 and 6. And so everything I do is with them in mind. And how can I protect them and give them the skills they need?
Yeah, and I think what people don't know sometimes about nonprofit work is having a board is incredibly important. You all do so much for child builders, and you just do it, in your spare time, which is, we all know we're busy. So um, it's just amazing to me because as a mom as well and working, it is hard sometimes to find that extra space. And you're doing it with child builders and RedM, which is fantastic. Well, and I love that. I think that's what brings us real joy in life is like we love our jobs, but if we can make an impact in the greater good of society, that fills us up, I think, in a
Yeah,
different way.
absolutely.
So I was reading more about RedM. You and I have chatted about it at our, functions and when I see you, and I've done a little research. But one thing I love is that it's not like a norm. It's not like child builders where there's staff and all that. Can you speak into that a little bit more and tell us more about RedM?
Yeah, absolutely. So RedM is unique. And it's one of the things I really love about it because it's 100% volunteer led. So it's people just like me that are professionals in industry, a lot of oil and gas, but a lot of other industries too. We have full-time, usually high demanding careers because the type of people that want to do this work are the type of people that take on high demanding, they're usually high performers type of people. And we all just wanted to make a difference. And so it's really more of a movement or a collective of professionals that have come together and said, we want to make a difference in the area of anti-trafficking, and we want to raise awareness and help the people around us, our own networks, learn how to support this movement and how to protect their children. Really, what are the signs? And so it is really unique because we are just professionals in this space, our networks are very different, and we're able to connect with other nonprofits like Child Builders and some of the other partners that we work with, and extend those networks that we have from our own professional careers into that space in the community.
That's amazing. And so you, as RedM, kind of go into businesses and raise awareness, raise funding, those kinds of things to stop trafficking, correct?
Yeah. I'll speak. The funding piece seems interesting because what we're really focused on is awareness. But part of people's journey to learning about trafficking is as they want to support that movement. A lot of the easiest thing to do is to donate your money, or as a company or an organization, it's giving a grant or finding some. So the money comes, and we use that to give back to survivors that are needing those support and funds. But the big part is awareness. And so a lot of what I do for RedM is I go to companies, and they'll gather up a full conference room of employees, and we'll have an hour-long session on what is trafficking, what are the signs, and how do you protect your children? What do you look
Mm.
for? And this is really every single session that we have somebody come to us after, or find some of our resources after, and say, I think this is happening to my daughter. I think this is happening to my
Wow.
niece. I think this is happening to my grandchild, and what do I do? And we're able to connect them with experts that can help them either intervene in the process, or if their child's already been taken, that can actually work with investigators to help recover. And so the sessions are incredibly impactful, because not only is it raising awareness on what to look for, but trafficking is so widespread that typically when you get that amount of people together, it's impacted somebody in that room.
Right. It's going to make a difference every
Yeah.
time you have a conversation. I was looking
Yeah.
at some of the stats, and you were saying nearly 80,000 children just in Texas alone are currently being trafficked.
Yeah, that's right. If you want to think about 80,000, it's kind of a hard number to picture, but the Houston Texans stadium, it holds around 69,000. So you would overflow the Texans stadium with children if you got every child that's currently being trafficked in Texas in that stadium. That's how widespread this is.
That's mind blowing. Like, even working for Child Builders and kind of being in it, you know, we go in and we talk to children about some skills. We're going to talk about that in a minute. But I don't even realize sometimes, like, that is a staggering number of children, that it's
Yeah.
wild.
Yeah, and it's very, because people think of trafficking a lot of times. If you haven't really thought much about it, you think about the movie Taken, or you
Right.
think you're thinking, okay, that means a child's been taken,
Right.
physically taken and being kept, and that's not the reality for a lot of victims that are currently being trafficked. A lot of times, even for children, they may still be in the home with their
Mhm.
families, and their trafficker might still be trafficking. So when Child Builders goes to schools and delivers a lot of the curriculum, chances are there are children that are currently being trafficked, that you and the counselors and everyone that you're training are talking to. These kids that might currently be in that life.
Yeah, that's wild. So let's talk about the crossroads there of Child Builders and RedM a minute, um, because there are skills as parents we know that we can teach our children to stop this from happening. And
Mhm.
I love how you said when we talked about some ideas of this podcast that yes, video games, technology, that's a piece of it. But there's a bigger picture here of what we can be doing to protect our kids. So let's chat about assertiveness and start with that, because that was mind blowing to me when I started working at Child Builders. Not something I grew up with. So do you want to speak into that a little bit about how we can help as parents to teach our children assertiveness?
Sure. Kind of taking it back to the trafficking phase is, what a lot of people don't realize is that traffickers are very skilled at what they do, and so the first part of engaging a child and bringing them into the life of trafficking is that they're going to go through a grooming process, or even luring first, or some sort of process. And so they're going to approach your children in some way. Could be at an event, could be it could be a friend that they have, or it could be through video games. There's many different ways, but they're going to find some sort of way to access your child and start having a conversation. And they're going to lure them in by touching on their vulnerabilities. And so they're going to create a connection, and all of a sudden they're going to be the one that your child trusts. They're going to be the one that gets your child. It could be maybe your child just really wants to be a TikTok star or a YouTube star. That's mine. My 9-year-old, he's like, oh, I follow all these YouTube stars and I could be a YouTube star. And as a parent, our first thought is, that's not a good career, or, that's very difficult, and we want to prepare them for that. But what the traffickers will do is these groomers is they'll say, well, you can be a TikTok star. You definitely have what it takes. And they create a connection and they build trust with that. And they try to separate that trust from the parents. And so the idea is, can they disconnect you or isolate you away from your friends and your parents as they move you through that whole process? So your question was, where does assertiveness play in this? I think the more that we can teach our kids that they have the ability to stand up for themselves, they have the ability to understand that they can say no to adults or to other people, that they have the body autonomy, um, they don't owe anybody anything. It's going to prepare them for all these tactics that these traffickers are going to try to use on them.
Absolutely.
So
Yeah,
I
so
think, go
really
ahead.
teaching them too, like teaching them, hey, this is what people are doing. Like, this is what grooming looks like. Some
Mhm.
people will use these tactics to get close to you, but not to help you, to actually hurt you. And I love how on our notes we talked about that, having openness and communication with our children. I think that's where it starts, is, us as parents saying, not to instill fear, but to instill knowledge. Like, this is what happens online. This is what happens when someone is trying to isolate you from us. Come talk to us. Let's talk about red flags, right?
Yeah, and if you're building that foundation with your child of trust and honest communication from the beginning, then those conversations are easier, and your child's more likely to bring to you, hey, this person's been talking to me,
Yep.
and
And
they're
this is
telling me
strange.
they're telling me I can do this, and you're
Mhm.
saying this. Let's talk about it. That they're less likely to hide these types of conversations they're having from you, because you have such a strong connection and you've built that foundation of trust with your child.
Absolutely. So having the knowledge to know, hey, maybe this isn't right. Maybe I need to tell someone. And also, I can stand up for myself and be assertive. Like, what that person said, it did not feel right. And I can say, stop. I don't like that. So
Yeah.
that's
And
where
you say,
assertiveness comes in.
stop, I don't like this.
Yes.
And I teach that with my kids who are younger, even talking to each other. When my older son picks on my younger one, I
Mhm.
teach my younger one, hey, tell him, say, stop, I don't like this.
Yes.
And it starts with that, because these are little things. You think, well, why does that matter? They're just boys. They're just going to pick on each other. But children need to know that they have full autonomy for against anyone that they're talking to. And so
Exactly.
it's little things, like I'm very careful that if I'm in a group, if I take my kids into a party or a group setting, and they're not comfortable with giving hugs to everybody in the room, I tell them that they have that choice.
Yep.
You can choose whether you want to hug this person or not. And if you don't, that's okay.
Yeah.
That's okay. You don't have to hug that person. You could just say hi and give a high five if you want. And little things like that are what are the things that are going to teach your child that they have that body autonomy, that they have choices, before, instead of just assuming, well, I have to be polite, I have to be nice. Those are the things that traffickers are going to use against them.
Yeah. I often talk about how I grew up in a pretty isolated environment. I was a missionary kid in Guatemala. And so thankfully it was a very safe community, but still things happened. And I was definitely raised in a very healthy family, but never taught, hey, you can say no to something you don't like. Like, I wouldn't have even thought to think through, what do I like? What do I not like? Who am I okay with, maybe giving a hug? Who makes me feel awkward in these situations, right? And am I allowed to say, stop? I love now, and I think it took me to my 30s to go, it's okay for me to say, I don't want that right now. I can understand what I need, what I want, and then vocalize it, which is basically what we're teaching in assertiveness is what do you want? What do you need? And how can you do that respectfully? And then on the other hand of how do you accept someone's no, I don't like that and be respectful back?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And I think as children are learning those assertiveness skills and they're using them, there's also that piece of feeling like they have the trusted adult in their life that they can go tell about these things that made them uncomfortable.
Absolutely.
And that's also in the programs that child builders teach is knowing who your trusted adult is and knowing and keep what is it keep asking keep telling
Yep.
keep telling
Keep
keep
telling
telling.
so you get help
um yeah, and
and
so
it's never your
that
fault.
yeah, it takes assertiveness skills too, because a lot of times, you might feel like, well, I did tell somebody, but the assertiveness piece is standing up and saying, well, I'm going to keep telling until I'm heard.
What got you kind of interested in child builders in the first place?
Yep. So I'm a survivor myself of childhood abuse, and I speak pretty openly about that now. I didn't always. I've done the work to be able to speak more openly about it, and in my experience, and especially looking back at my experience now as an adult and seeing it, seeing it through my child as a child through those eyes, and now as an adult looking back, my experience really led me to want to support the community and prevent this from happening to all these other children. And knowing uh, once you start talking openly about this, you hear that it's just really widespread,
Absolutely.
especially when I talk to a lot of other women who have experienced some sort of abuse in their life as a child. That drove me to where I wanted to figure out how can I do this? How can I use the skills that I have to support a lot of the good work that's already going on. And the strategy work that I do in my professional career is the skills that I have. And so I started to seek out a board that I could utilize those skills, and I found Child Builders right away. Survivors, as we've gone through a lot of this, we do want to change the world, but if you haven't done the work on yourself, then you're not prepared yet to go out and do any type of work for others. You really have to look internally and try to understand what triggers you and understand the traumas that you've experienced. And so that's how I joined the board of Child Builders. And I've never looked back. It's been such a great experience.
Just mentioning, it's interesting. We're coming back around to this topic of how widespread abuse and trafficking is. I just realized this summer, I just got done telling you that I was in such a like isolated kind of, community, but I have heard stories this summer from family members who this has affected, and you don't realize. And almost every time we do this curriculum with kids, there is someone who says, "Hey, something's going on with me." Parenting's hard. Uh, you can't always be there with your kids 24/7, and sometimes there's things going on at home that you wouldn't think as a parent would be happening, but it is. And so it's so important that we get out there and we talk, and that these programs are everywhere. And kids know I can be safe. I can tell someone. I can be assertive. I can get help. Because
Yeah.
so often we're raising kids who think this is normal. Like what's happening to me is normal, or I shouldn't say anything.
There's the I can do all these things. And then there's the I deserve to be safe.
Yes.
I deserve to be in a loving environment. And a
Mhm.
lot of kids, they don't know that. They don't the environment that they're in, they're being told maybe they don't deserve that.
Yes.
They're being told that's not for you. And so these types of programs are building assertiveness, but also building that confidence in who they are. And again, I use that word autonomy a lot, but understanding that they have the control over their own body. They have autonomy over their own body.
Yes, absolutely. Because it's so hidden and it's so everywhere. And so again, having open communication with our children, number one thing that can, they can feel like they can tell when something's not right. And then also teaching them when they're away from us that they deserve to be respected and they deserve to be safe. And that's what this looks like. Which is kind of revolutionary. I feel like we didn't talk about that in the 80s and 90s,
Well,
we still
and in
don't.
some places it was the opposite, right? It was children are to be children, what is it? Children are to be seen,
Being
not heard,
not heard. Yeah,
not heard.
absolutely.
There was this idea that as a child, you are to respect your elders, but we never really talked about the respect that you have as a human being, even as a
Absolutely.
child. And so, yeah, I think that that is it is very different than at least the way that I remember growing up and the way that you remember growing up. And we do have this opportunity with our own children to change and break that cycle of the way the kind of these beliefs in themselves are raised as they're younger.
Going back just a minute about like online stuff, me as a parent, I'm interested in this because my daughter is always wanting to make podcasts and she sees I'm doing it and then she wants to be on. And I've kind of put it, and she's so good at it. Like she's really loves
Oh,
doing it, loves being seen, making videos. And I haven't really gotten to what do we do with that. And so talking about how your son is kind of in that same phase.
yeah.
Do you allow the YouTube videos? Do you put boundaries? Where have you settled on all of that?
Well, I'm probably more strict than a lot of people just because of what I've seen.
Absolutely.
And even my closest friends, we're a little bit more strict. But I will say that you could get as strict as you want, and you could ban all video games, you could ban all YouTube, you could ban anything where your child you think has some sort of connection to the outside world. All of a sudden, we get this like false sense of safety that if the child's in the house with us, then they're safe. As
Right.
long as they're there, they're safe. But I will tell you that we've seen through RedM, we've seen grooming happen through places you would never have expected. And one example that I use a lot is we had one family who found out their daughter was being groomed through the mom's Bible app. There was a chat feature and they didn't
Well,
realize. And so the traffickers are way more skilled than we think. They know how to get access to your child to make that connection. Banning all video games isn't the answer. And if you think that that's the way, just getting super, super strict is going to solve this, then you're probably not seeing some vulnerabilities that exist that are there that you need to work on. And so I think it's different for every family. It depends on how much you can monitor and watch and pay attention to what your kid's doing. But what I would say is that regardless, the threat is real, it's there. Being able to have that open communication with your child is going to mean more than anything that you could do with banning and restricting and all these other things, because your child, when that happens, when they are approached, if they're openly talking to you, you're going to know about it because you have an open line of communication. So that's the thing. The most important thing I stress to do is that you have to foster that open and honest communication and have very strong lines of trust. That's what you need to work on the most.
we've talked in other podcasts about ways to kind of do that as families, setting time apart during the day where you're like, this is a family meeting time, or this is a check-in time. Maybe it's picking your kids up
Oh,
from
I
school
love
and you're in
that.
the car. And I think that's really important as parents is for us to put our phones down or put our work aside. And
Hmm.
again, we're so busy and I struggle with this, even knowing all the things. And so I don't think that we can say that enough is finding time to connect with your child and say things like, hey, who did you chat with today? Or what happened online? Or, just feeling it out, seeing what's going on in our kids' lives and communicating with them and letting them know they're safe to say
Yeah.
whatever they need to say.
Yeah, and there's things that you can look for as well. If maybe your child's older, they are already are being groomed and you don't know it. There's things that you could look at, like a change in behavior. Is your child all of a sudden their grades are going down? Are they not communicating with their friends? A really good question to ask is, who are your friends right now? And or how's, ask them about their friends. Like how is Timothy doing? What's Timothy doing today? And if you're noticing that they're just not talking to their friends as much, or they're isolating themselves more, there could be something going on there. And so, another really cool trick that one of my mentors taught me is he said, ask them what their friends think about something. Like, what do your friends think about Roblox? And who are they talking to on there? Because a lot of times they won't talk about what they're doing in a specific space, but they'll tell you more about what their friends are doing. And you can kind of draw some open communication, and that opens the door for you to have a little bit more discussion with your kid.
That is so good.
Yeah.
That's a really good tip. That's amazing. Yeah, and it's similar for abuse. We talk about if a child is um, their behavior is changing or their grades are changing. Anytime with our kids where you just see something that has completely changed, it's a good moment for us to check in and say,
Mhm.
is something going on? What happened? I'm here for you. I want to listen. Those are really, really great tips. I love it.
And I'll just leave with this. This morning, I was taking the kids to school, and I always like to just ask them questions when we're in the car. It's just kind of a good time to talk and open up that communication. And I've been trying to think about what are some better questions that I can ask my kids. And so the question I asked them this morning was, what's something that worries you? And I was so shocked to hear their responses. My oldest son, his response was, well, I've been worried lately that you and dad are going to get in a car wreck. And I
Wow.
had no idea that that was something that was on his mind. And so we talked about that. And then my youngest one, um, he's still pretty young. So he said, well, I'm really worried that I'm going to have bed bugs in my room. And I was like, oh, maybe because at night we say, like, don't let the bed bugs bite. And I
Yep.
didn't realize that that was causing him to worry. I leave with that. If you can find creative ways to have conversations with your kids and just open some, maybe ask questions that you never thought to ask before, you might be surprised with their responses and where that can take the conversation.
I love that. Checking in, being a listening ear, and being aware of what's going on in our kids' life. I did do some more looking into RedM. So RedM is a national organization, right? Are there other
Global.
global? That's
Yes.
wild.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
it seems
it's
like
grown.
same as kind of like the Houston chapter is like it's just volunteers and leaders in the community that run it.
Yeah, so it started in Houston, and I would say it's
Okay.
still Houston's the biggest chapter,
Okay.
and where a lot of the core activity is still happening. Within the past 2 years, there's been a huge growth. And so we've been opening chapters in cities across the US, and we've got a chapter in Canada, we've started in London, Paris, Aberdeen, and so we're just now kind of getting into the Europe space. But it is a global organization that's growing very, very fast. And same model, 100% volunteer led. It's just professionals in those cities that are coming together and saying, yeah, we want to connect as a movement and see what impact we can have in our city.
Yeah, I would urge people if that's something that seems interesting to look into Red M and yeah, it seems great doing a lot of really, really wonderful work.
Yeah, absolutely.
Um, so if there was one thing you would want to leave people with today, what would that be?
We touched on it a lot, but I think that the biggest thing to take away from this, because I'm assuming if you're listening to this podcast, you probably have children, and you're wondering, what you could take away to help you with your skills as a parent. What you might not know is that traffickers, the average age of engagement for girls is around 13. The average age of engagement for boys is around 9.
Wow.
So even if you're thinking, well, this sounds like something more for teenagers, that grooming process is starting very young. And it's not just girls, 30% of victims are boys,
Wow.
a rough number. And so this is a threat that you should be worried about. And the most important thing you could do to mitigate this threat right now is build the skills that you are learning in this podcast, build the skills that you're learning in all the other activities and frameworks that Child Builders has through their websites. Use that to build a relationship with your child so that you have that open line of communication and trust. That's the best thing that you can do for your child to help them prevent any of this from happening to them with these traffickers.
That's amazing. Yeah, I think we can never start too young because these skills are useful for a 2-year-old, useful for a teenager, useful for a
Yes.
30-year-old who started, not that I'm 30 now, but when I started at Child Builders, learning about assertiveness it changed my life. It changed how
Yeah.
I interact. So start young, and it's never too late to start talking to your kids about assertiveness, about the grooming process, about having body autonomy.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's great. Well, I so appreciate you being here. This was a lovely conversation. I
Yeah.
always
Thanks,
love
Priscilla.
talking to you.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for joining us today. And like we said on the episode, that we as parents, caregivers, community members, we can help kids stay safe by opening lines of communication, teaching assertiveness, and being vigilant. As always, I'm honored you spent this time with us. Join us next time for a conversation on emotional intelligence and how to cultivate that in your kids. Please like or subscribe to our podcast. We appreciate any comments or questions that you have. And until next time, stand strong, stay safe. Thanks so much. Bye.